Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Hope everyone is doing okay this morning. Let me check my volume. Always check your sound. Always check your sound. Alright, good. We're looking good. So, an interesting kerfuffle, I'm going to say it that way, has taken place on the left. Glen Ford. I don't want to call him. I want to call him a badass name, but a warrior. Glen Ford has taken a battle axe to Shaun King. Glen Ford writes this awesome article, and I actually agree with everything that's in the article. And so, in fact, I probably would have thought the exact same thing had I read Shaun King's article. Now, so I am going to talk about Shaun King's article from the way I think about the article, but my way of thinking about it is similar to Glen Ford's. I'm going to even read Glen Ford's article because he gives it the finer detail that I like and that I kind of want to put into it. But I'm going to give a summary in the way that, I'm going to give a summary of Glen Ford's article, and then I'm going to read Glen Ford's article, but I kind of want to talk about it for myself first, separate from it. Shaun King writes an article. It's like everything is boiled down to race. I have mixed feelings about Shaun King. So, in one respect, necessary and does good work because there are things that need to be exposed from the standpoint of law enforcement and from the standpoint of unfairness in our system. By the same token, to the hammer, the entire world looks like a nail, and it doesn't seem to be able to deviate from that very specific point. So even Trump meeting with Vladimir Putin in Helsinki gets boiled down to this issue of race. Shaun King writes an article, and in that article, Shaun King makes this point of saying, and to boil it down in a nutshell, Donald Trump standing beside Vladimir Putin was essentially debasing America. And that him not answering questions and not standing up for America was in some way the way black people have felt in America. Now, he explains this, so I'm not shitting on the article. The article slightly makes sense, and I'll explain what I mean. There's a contradiction in the article where it kind of breaks the logic of the article. There's something that he said in the article that is absolutely ludicrous and absurd, and yet he throws it out there. Straight face. But it's lunacy. And then there's another contradiction in the article that I'm going to talk about. So I'm not going to take a go at the article, but just to explain it further. He's making this point that whites looked at what Trump did and all across the media flipped out. Chuck Todd, Jake Tapper, Anderson Cooper. Just passes out on camera. People were fanning him. Anderson, are you okay? Trump's a turncoat. Trump's a traitor. Trump's is treasonous. You have one of the FBI guys. The guy lied to Congress. Gets out there talking about this is treason. Across the media sphere. He's making the point that says, essentially, look, it seems like the only time something is true is when a white person tells you that it's true. Meaning, to be black, to be told up is down, left is right. In this particular case, Donald Trump, the intelligence services have said one thing, and Donald Trump didn't stand up for America. When asked about it, he didn't stand up for those same intelligence services. He uses for this is saying, look at Emmett Till, look at all of these other African Americans that were either killed by law enforcement or that were let off with our particular justice system. That's his basic point, saying that in the same way with the legal system and the apparatus that is government has ignored, denied, and even many times deferred justice, this is essentially what white people are experiencing with Donald Trump in Helsinki. A bit strained, agreed, and riddled with contradiction. First contradiction, I would make the point that you can't have it both ways. In one aspect of the article, Shaun King venerates or denigrates law enforcement. Essentially, this law enforcement have let these people off, or the justice system lets people off. This person is shot, this person is on video, we know this person did it, and the person walks nonetheless. This justice deferred. This thing of African Americans going to prison longer, this justice system that's unfair and unequal. These FBI agents, or these agents who've gone after and broken up groups, African American groups that were leftists in origin. He brings up this history, this checkered past. He brings up the fact that this takes place. I mean, bringing up these African Americans who were either denied justice or to some degree were in the boot of justice was his point in bringing it up. By the same token, venerates these same law enforcement officers that were involved in denying justice to African Americans, or this justice system denying it to African Americans. Venerates them as these paragons of virtues. These people with these iron jaws tilted to the sky, these muscles rippling in the breeze. Mueller standing there, the waves in his hair, a little bit of sand in his face from the beach. No irony at all that the same iron-jawed guy who's standing there with his shirt off and his muscles rippling in the breeze lied about weapons of mass destruction and sold that lie to the American public. Now, this level of breathtaking irony that's over the top and in your face gets utterly ignored by mainstream media. These agents, these paragons of virtue that routinely lie, as King would allude to and agree to, in this case, they got it right. Everything that you want to heap on Donald Trump, they got it right. Mind you, no one has been convicted. No evidence has been put forth showing either a link between these two or that Russia did it. None. It's assertions. And the kicker is, no one would ever appear in court over this case, meaning Mueller can say whatever Mueller wants to say. This is used as a political tool in order to hit Donald Trump. And what it boils down to is, because they hate Donald Trump to this degree, they're willing to sign on to whatever you want to say about him. Evidence be damned. So in one breath, he can say, oh, those fucking cops. And on the other breath, yes, the euphoric FBI, who's always been on the right side of history, and they're paragons of fucking virtue. Get him. Get him. We fucking hate Donald Trump. We just need you to hit him with something. I don't care what it is. Shaun King in a Russian frenzy because it hits Donald Trump. That's all what it boils down to, right? It hits Donald Trump. The other thing he said in the article is utterly absurd, and to some degree gets across the perspective that Shaun King has taken here, which is to some degree utterly absurd. It's a stretch as it is to make this thing fit into racial guidelines. I'm pretty sure you can do it, but goddamn it, it's a stretch to do it. And then he jumps the shark and he says, this is the worst performance of a president. Now, in fact, to give the exact quote, he said it was the worst appearance of a president at a press. Yeah, right here. Let's see. Maybe the lowest moment of any presidential press conference in modern American history. It was a low. Think about that. Think of all the press conferences that George Bush had to engage himself in from the standpoint of going into a country, killing 1 million people, and completely destabilizing that region of the world. Think of the magnificent consequences associated with what Bush did, the ramifications of what Bush did, and the press conference leading up to wars that would shape the future to which we have now, or the reality to which we find ourselves now. Think of the press conferences that Clinton was engaged in when he destroyed welfare, or Glass-Steagall, or NAFTA. Like, think of all the things. Hell, Think of the press conference that Obama was engaged in. There's one that Glen Ford talks about, talking about the Congolese where millions of people died. I'm making a point to you that are you really telling me that Donald Trump, even if you believe that there was something there, that the Russians did something. I haven't even gotten to that part. That is the worst press conference ever. It takes somewhat of a warped perspective, or a perspective that is so riddled with Trump derangement that he can't see straight. Glen Ford is pointing out that the brother is Trump deranged, and that in this article he is experiencing cognitive dissonance, and at the same token a warped worldview. Glen Ford calls him an activist in a bubble. That's about right. That's about right. What are the things that actually matter? Even if you believe that spearfishing, Podesta, was an attack on democracy, and Facebook and Twitter ads was also an attack on democracy, I think that's somewhat lunacy considering what we do. The United States is not a virgin. Ultimately, it's a virgin or a whore calling itself a virgin. The first guy that walks by. I mean, are you shitting me? We don't have place. We don't have standing to make this argument. Even if it was true, we don't have standing to make this argument. Make it nonetheless. Straight face. As it attacks Iran. As it attacks Nicaragua. As it attacks Venezuela. Through economic means. Straight face. No issue with Shaun King. I have issue with people pushing the Russia nonsense. The public doesn't care about it. And at the end of the day, we don't have standing to make this argument. There's a certain degree of cognitive dissonance and an activist in a bubble pushing a narrative that is going to attack the left, that does try to make this case that status quo didn't fail, that ultimately what failed was Russia intervening into the electoral process. Supporting that argument and not necessarily having anything to back that argument up other than assertions, but being perfectly willing to accept those assertions as reality because it attacks Donald Trump. Glen Ford has a piece that I like, and I'm going to read it. King harkened back to his initiation into activism as a student in Morehouse in 1999. The murder of Abdul Diallo cut down 41 bullets full side by New York City cops, who were subsequently acquitted, taught King that facts be damned, justice is often administered by the powerful for the powerful. Unfortunately, Shaun King didn't learn very much after all. When it comes to the powerful denizens of the FBI and the CIA, the FBI special prosecutors, or corporate communication outlets like the New York Times, the Washington Post, MSNBC, and CNN, King is a true believer. If the target is Trump or Putin, grand juries have routinely failed to indict killer cops, even when the murderers are caught on video, become paragons of justice and virtue in King's mind were manipulated to indict Russians. Intelligence agencies that tell galactic lies about non-existent Iraqi weapons of mass destruction, setting the stage for extermination of millions, or to top spies brazenly and feloniously lie to Congress about spying on the entirety of the United States population, become vectors of truth when they offer assessments, but no proof whatsoever, that Russia meddled in the United States electoral process. When it comes to the powerful denizens of the FBI and the CIA or federal prosecutors, the corporate communication outlets, King is a true believer. For Shaun King, Trump's willingness to stand in physical proximity to the leader of another nuclear superpower while failing to signify trust in these same intelligence agencies marks the lowest moment of any presidential press conference in modern American history. Lower apparently in King's esteem than George W. Bush's declaration to the press that his FEMA chiefs was doing a hell of a job aiding victims of Katrina, or President Bill Clinton's press conferences announcing his intention to abolish welfare as we know it, or introduces anti-crime bill that would send literally millions of African Americans to long-term prison. King's activist awakening occurred in 1999, but it seems to not so shocked his moral sensibilities when President Obama made Wall Street operative Timothy Geithner and Larry Summers to economic positions, even though those same financial interests had just tanked the global economy and wiped out generations of black wealth. King did not believe that the presidential press conference had reached a historic low point when Obama stood with National Security Advisor Suzanne Rice, the person most intimately involved in the United States sanctioned slaughter of over 6 million Congolese under President Clinton, Bush, and Obama, the worst genocide since World War II. That is, the worst bloodbath in modern American history. King isn't even aware of the scope of the Congolese genocide despite his years of journalists, since the president he holds in such relatively high esteem have done all in their power to cover up with those complicit, this is hard to read, with the complicity of the same corporate media the King trusts to inform him on Russiagate. Essentially, they're covering this up, which is why King may not know that it took place. I'll read this part again. King probably isn't even aware of the scope of the Congolese genocide, since the presidents he holds in such relatively high esteem have done all in their power to cover it up. President Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon, many of the press conferences on Vietnam, replete with lies that led to the deaths of at least 3 million people, do not rank nearly as high in King's historical assessment as his sense of betrayal at Trump's meeting with Putin. This shows where King's head is and where it is not. King is fully respectful, in awe really, of the legitimacy of the CIA, the assassins of the Lumumba, and the countless other foreign leaders, and the most prolific regime changers on earth, and the FBI, the neutralizers, the COINTELPRO who assassinated Fred Hampton, and who are now working to whatever program targets black identity extremists, which may or may not include activist Shaun King. When these professional liars, disruptors, and regime changers turn their tools on Trump and Putin, their words become golden for King. You get his point. These people who King would ordinarily decry become these supermen, these men of integrity, these men of great and iron will who are just there to do a job, apolitical, just there to get to the truth and give the truth to the public, and that's all they're there for. They're just honest working blokes until they start focusing on blacks, in which case they're problems that we need to deal with. But as long as you're talking about Donald Trump, yes, you can say whatever you want. These people know what they're talking about. They're paragons of virtue. I love that, because that is an absolute contradiction in this particular piece. King bemoans the fact that white races only recognize black perceptions as true when white persons in authority says so, yet he accepts the proofless Russiagate assessments of the white people in authority at the CIA and the FBI. That's strange and contradictory behavior for a self-described Black Lives Matter activist. In their platform on issues, the Movement for Black Lives Matter warned that intelligence agencies are not black people's friend. Get what he's... God damn it, I love this. When he's saying they're not black people's friend, he means that as an absolute. It doesn't mean that they're not black people's friend when they are not attacking Trump. I'm saying this in a weird way. I'm trying to make this point that it's not just when it's focused on us. It's somewhat as an absolute. And yes, they're turning their tools on Donald Trump now, but in the same way they're turning their tools on you, you didn't necessarily trust them. Why would you inherently just immediately trust them just because they're turning their tools on somebody you don't like? I love that. All right, I'm going to get to the end of this because this one has gone way, way too long. But right here. Shaun King may be an activist, but he's not part of the black radical tradition of W.E.B. Du Bois, Malcolm X, Dr. Martin Luther King, and the Black Panther Party. Even Du Bois once toyed with accepting the offer of a commission in the United States Army Intelligence during World War I when it was massively spying on disrupting blacks and socialists. But Du Bois lived long enough to reject such collaboration and so became the target of the state. Maybe Shaun King's worldview will mature in the future, but right now, the brother ain't ready. Wow. Wow. That is a slapdown, man. That is a slapdown. The brother ain't ready. Just, how dare you slap me with the back of your hand, sir? I am a man. You would hit me with your fists, or not at all. Wow. Popilski. I love that. Popilski. Strengthen in numbers. Thanks for your effort, Jamal, and to all your chatters. Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Guys, and I appreciate your help with the show. However you guys help. Super chat, Patreon, sending me clips, all that stuff. All of that stuff's help with the door. I get video and audio clips all the time from people saying, hey, take a look at this. Take a listen to this. I am on Twitter. You can easily reach me on Twitter. I don't necessarily get back to everybody. It kind of depends on the message itself. But nevertheless, it's all appreciated. So thank you very much. I'm going to end this one here. I'm not going to keep this one long because I've been doing this all night. And Glen Ford, fucking warrior, Glen Ford. I'm just calling him the warrior because that's what he is. Coming out of the darkness and just grabbing Shaun King and shaking the shit out of him. It's just out of the blue. But that being said, there is a demarcation point here. There are people who say, myself included, this Russia stuff is nonsense. And even if it was true, America is not a virgin. It is a whore screaming that somebody touched her inappropriately. Now, just because someone is sexually promiscuous, yeah, they still have agency over their bodies. But in this case, you have America, who is a little bit beyond this idea of sexually promiscuous, screaming about something that they have been doing themselves. That's somewhat of a tortured analogy, but I think you get my point. And I don't like using that analogy of a whore because it's bothering me from the standpoint of the language. But I'm just trying to make this point. That this country is absolutely uber aggressive in using these technologies and to disrupt, to dig into, to pry into, to change, to insert itself into other governments and other electoral processes. We invaded ourselves and instigated ourselves into the French election, I think in 2012. We have put Cuban Twitter with this idea of trying to stimulate or start a revolution in Cuba. I mean, some of this stuff is amazing. But we do it every day, constantly, nonstop. We try to influence all of these factors around the world. And that doesn't even get to the point of the hard methods of violence for something like Libya or Iraq or Somalia or whatever one of these other countries that we're bombing. We have no standing to talk about a spearfishing where John Podesta was too incompetent to make sure his data was kept tight. That is not an attack on democracy. That is other nations doing what we do ourselves. We don't have standing to bitch about this. Nor is it an adult thing to do to bitch and complain in the way they were doing. Secure your systems. But be aware that we do the same. They're using this for political effect in order to attack Donald Trump. The idea that Shaun King is adding into the voice of an attack that Democrats have made up whole cloth to some degree gives you a position of where Shaun King is on this. Glen Ford is pointing it out, and he's pointing out the contradictions associated with that particular disposition. I love it. Absolutely love it. So, let's see. Jamal, please cover Graham Elwood's individualist bootstrapper rant meltdown in his last chat. He's considering ending the show over it. What? Graham Elwood, individualist bootstrapper rant meltdown. I have to check it. I don't know who Graham Elwood is. I'll have to find it. Alright guys, I'm going to end this here. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. Of course, you can always support the patron. And Marshall Villager, I'll look it up now. I see what's going on. Thanks guys. It's early. I hope you guys have a decent day.